divinity. Now, parallel to this situation, also another tendency in Christianity appeared not yet the first time, because we know that also in the past centuries that was the case with the desert fathers. The proto-monastery was a tendency to go to the desert and to live isolated, and in this way also to become holy or near to God. But with the time, they become organized in communities, females and males community, and this is what after become also the monasteries and groups of people that came together to achieve a higher level of holiness through isolation. That was another aspect that developed in Christianity, that also was related with celibacy, introduction, and with extremely fasting, with justification by works, with damaging the body, because it's the origin of sin, and the flesh is the origin of all concupiscences and all sins in body. So a completely different perspective comes here also. At the same time, the development of bishops increased in importance, especially after the legalization in 313 with the Edict of Milan, and because the church increased and spread even outside of the boundaries from the Roman Empire, and they also become more organized and structured. They began to distribute the regions of the Roman Empire according to dioceses. This means governmental territory divisions that are now for religious purposes. Because the bishops were more concentrated in the urban centers, they began also to increase in power toward the other rural Christian communities, especially in the issue of laws, regulations, and resolutions based on the tradition, not based on the Holy Scriptures. So the metropolitan bishops achieved a very high importance and prestige. And they developed also the doctrine about the apostolic succession. So Peter was the first bishop of Rome, and in this way also they followed this custom. Because Constantine, as I have mentioned to you, changed the capital from Rome of the empire to Byzance, that after became Constantinople, the city of Constantine. And also different councils took place in this city, became not only the city of the empire, but also increased the importance as a headquarter of the Christian religion in this part of the empire, except that of Rome. But the Bishop of Rome increased in power, not only religious, but also political, because of the empty place that the emperor lived after him when he moved all the court to Byzance. The tensions between the East and the West are increasing with the time. Was not only doctrinal problems, was not only the tension between the Bishop of Rome and the Bishop of Byzance or Constantinople, but this is also a problem between the power of the political leadership from the both sections of the Roman Empire. We know that under Constantine, the empire became again one only empire, but the tension between both, because the capital was in Byzance or Constantinople, bring the tendency to divide the empire. And we know that after the death of Constantine, again the empire was divided in three main sections. So the tensions increase, remain, and finally will come to a completely break after a couple of centuries, as we will see, especially the next one. At the same time, in the east part of the empire, we know that was the beginning of a schism, a completely separation, even among Christianities. And this is Christians, and this is evident even now in the 4th century. We know that in 1054, this division was a fact and became the Orthodox, Christian Orthodox Church, and in the West will be Catholic Church. But especially the problem with the liturgy, the way how to worship, was an issue. And exactly at this time was a problem with the Christians, Coptics, and the Armenian Christians. The Coptics were the Egyptian Christians. We know that Alexandria, the school, was in Egypt, and the Coptics have also own view of worship and understanding, and especially they consider the Sabbath as the only day of the Lord. So this began to be a difference, and also with the Armenians that establish their own universally Catholic way of understanding toward the western part of the We have mentioned already the tensions before Constantine, so we will go through this. The city of Rome in the 4th century lost the presence of the emperor, but gained the most influential bishop for the western part of the Roman Empire. And this is a very important element, especially when we will see that the main target of the Roman, the main target for the barbarian tribes was to conquer the city of Rome. And the disorder, the lack of leadership in the city himself provoke even more this situation and promote that the Bishop of Rome took a role that don't correspond to his office, but somehow was given by the circumstances and the situation. As we have mentioned, this period of peace, especially in the western section, because we will see that in the eastern part of the Roman Empire, especially what Persia was, the region of Persia, today Iran, was also persecution for the Christians. But in the west part, the spread of Christianity developed very, very quickly. Besides the internal problems, especially with the Goths and the Vandals that were Arian. At the same time, the pressure toward the borders of the Western Roman Empire from other Germanical tribes that come near to it. part of them, especially when the Goths become Christians, is the one that receive also the Bible translated in their own language, in Gothic language. That was between 348 and 383. Wulfila translated the Bible into the Gothic language. And that was a very important element, especially to spread Christianity among this tribe. And he was the one also that became the first bishop of the Goths. We need to realize that the Goths were divided between the Christian Goths and also the pagan Goths, and between them they fight also for this. Therefore was needed to support the Christian Goths, and one of the unifying elements was the translation of the Bible in the Gothic language. Now, when we speak about the Goths as a Christians, that was one of the main problems. In order to attract them to Christianity, a lot of concessions and compromising were added to it. And that's also infiltrated to the western and eastern part of the empire, so that the purity of the Christianity began to disappear. You see here in this graphic the invasions of the Roman Empire. I suppose you have studied already the trumpets. Do you?
The 7 trumpets?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so we don't need to go through the different invasions and what kind of effect these have, especially in the western part of the empire. But if you realize here, the pressure that came especially from the Goths that became the Visigoths. That was, the Goths came extremely from Scandinavia to this area. The first section that came in peaceful purposes covered this section of Eastern Europe. The second main became the Ostrogoths and the Visigoths, and all of them were Arians. All of them. The Vandals also was a very important tribe that was also Aryan. And they disturbed in a very inclusive manner the borders of the West Roman Empire, but we cannot forget also that the Goths intrude in the Eastern Roman Empire, and also there they brought the influence of the Arianism. So a lot of tension, political and religious, were at the same time working out to destroy and to erase the true doctrine. Now, let us see how the Christianity developed outside of the Roman Empire. The Armenian and the Ethiopian churches, when we speak about Armenian, we are concentrated in this area over here, in north of Turkey. This was Armenia originally, after they reduced the borders. Now, the Ethiopian church was like, today is South Egypt, Sudan, and the present territory of Ethiopia. They were aware about all what was going on in Christianity, especially the results of the Council of Nicaea. And they accepted somehow, but they have their own way of understanding most of them. For example, Sabbath remained as a day of worship in all the Ethiopian churches and Coptic churches, beside the decision of the Roman bishop. In this area also was a big important representation of Jewish population that also have an effect in the development of the Orthodox Church and influence them, especially in the point of to protect more the Sabbath in this way of the Judaism. But the Germanic migration of the 5th century that we will consider after, and the tension between the Gothics and the Huns provoke also a tension inside of Christianity related with the confrontation between the Orthodox Christianity and the Arianism. As I have mentioned to you, in the eastern part of the Roman Empire was not all the time peace. A great persecution fell upon the Christians in Persia, about 340. And according to the information that we have, thousands died and were executed because of Christianity. So we see that we cannot always present in parallel aspects the situation of the West and the Eastern Empire to understand proper Christianity, and we will see also when the separation between the Christian Orthodox and the Catholic Christians separated. So I think we don't need to emphasize too much the persecution of the Persian Christians, but this takes approximately between 20 and 30 years of persecution, mortal persecution, and Constantine didn't have the control of the complete area, because if you remember, before him was divided in 3 sections. He had only 1 section. He had conquered Rome and other sections, but don't have the completely and absolutely power about all the completely area. So also the Edict of Milan was not considered and was not respected, related with the tolerance of the religion at this time in the eastern part of the empire. What's a very important element that we need to consider in overview about the changes in Christianity during the time of Constantine? And this is very, very important to consider properly. The crucifixion was a method of death sentence from the Roman Empire, and was especially applied to Christianity and to Christians, especially during the time of Christ and after to the great persecutions under Diocletian. But in 314, Constantine gave an edict that stated death by crucifixion was abolished. So crucifixion for anyone as a sentence of death, and even for Christians, was completely abolished during this 4th century, completely. And this is one of the reasons why the cross then developed as a sign of Christianity. The tradition, but are not enough historical proofs to confirm that that was true or not, that when Constantine was in front of Rome and was ready to conquer Rome, was a lot of difficulties, and especially one of his relatives that was ruling Rome and don't wanted to come under the submission of Constantine, destroy the bridge that allowed to cross the river and to conquer the city. But Constantine had an idea, so he connected many little ships together, and they crossed with the horses through the river without bridge. But before this, he was looking at the city of Rome in the distance, and according to the tradition, he said that he saw a big light, and this light had the form of a cross. And he heard a voice that said, "In the name of Christ, you are going to conquer the city." And then he said then to his soldiers that in their shields they need to draw the form of a cross. And also in the flags that they have when they conquer the city, they say they have the form of a Latin cross. So that is tradition, but with the abolishment of the crucifixion as a death sentence, began also the distribution from the cross as a sign of Christianity, because Jesus died upon a cross, and one of the main executions practiced to Christianity during the last centuries was the sentence to die on a cross. So because of the abolishment of it, became also a sign of Christianity, and this happened under Constantine. The Pontifex Maximus means the high priest. The high priest was united two main offices: the emperor as political and civil leader of the empire, but he was at the same time high priest, the higher leader of the church. Now, because the tradition holds the Roman emperor as both the political leader and the religious leader, this principle became also a praxis in Christianity. And the Bishop of Rome, as I have emphasized different times, took a role as a political leader in the city of Rome with the time, beside his office as religious representative of Christianity of the area. We find that the Constantine title was called also Pontifex Maximus, and we see that in the different councils that he led and he called together, act as it. And also the Christianity somehow, in a very obvious form, recognized this religious authority in the way that they accepted and even agreed with the way how Constantine called the council in order to unify Christianity. Now, this double office in one person will be transferred with the time also to the Bishop of Rome, that became also the Pope of the Roman Catholic Church. That Sunday became a Roman public holiday was a fact in order to commemorate the day of the resurrection of Christ, that was at the same time the Sunday. So the combination between the resurrection of the Christian God and the pagan sun God came in together in one day, and that was the Sunday. And that was declared by Constantine in the first Sunday law that we have already considered, and was reinforced also by the church leaders. And in this way, the tendency that Sabbath disappear and Sunday take the place of the holiday was almost a fact. The church services also changed the simple and humble structure, and they follow now the imperial protocol. The reason for this is that the empire, the Roman Empire, not only tolerated Christianity, but they even granted many privileges to Christianity. Even Constantine, to his son, gave a Christian tutor, in order to give the example that Christianity is not only a religion, but also can transfer knowledge, according to the agnosticist perspective. In order to achieve the level of representation that the emperor wanted from Christianity, they needed to develop another system of worship more elaborated and more sophisticated according to the emperor expectatives. So they began to have elaborated processionals. They led by officials, followed by singing choirs, dressed in fancy robed attire to give a full body to the procession. Also the introduction of candles, the use of incense, the establishment of an altar, many decorations and ornament came to the churches, to the buildings. And the distinction, especially in the clothes of the leaders of Christianity according to the importance of their office, established also a hierarchy in the Christianity. And the higher office become a very venerated office, and they feel also superior, not only because of the office, but also the way how the emperor considered them and how they have a different attire. They perform special ceremonies, and they were also venerated from the members in a special way. So the completely church services changed and were structured according to imperial expectatives, losing the original simplicity given by Jesus Christ. The fact that the empire not only helped Christianity, but also built for them basilicas, big churches, especially in Constantinople. When the mother of Constantine became a Christian, and also his wife, they supported with a lot of money the building of churches, and they built churches, temples, and basilicas according to the Roman perspective. And you will see a similarity between the pagan temples, especially because of the higher ceilings and the big and monumental buildings of the churches and temples. That before, 1 century before, Christians didn't have it, and then all of a sudden become a very powerful religion, supported financially also from the emperor in the buildings. You see here one example of one of the oldest one. If you go to Constantinople today in Turkey, you can visit this. That was the general structure of a basilica. Have a main central section. In the last section you find the altar, and in the both sides, right and left, were different columns, and then you find on the walls different pictures, because if you remember, in the last century already began the reaction of the iconoclast because of this veneration of saints and martyrs. Now, the important point also in the basilica is that they built the first time a baptistry. Before, the Christians always baptized in flowing water. Now, in the church became a basilica when have a baptisterium. The baptisterium was a place where they performed baptism. And that was completely immersion of the body, was deep enough that approximately 12 people can be there and be completely in water, because it's until the 9th century that we find the sprinkling of the water. But at this time, in the baptisterium from the basilica, you will find the immersion baptism still practicing at this time. But that was a reaction from many other Christians that these kind of buildings were constructed, and because the empire paid for it, they also expressed their own ideas how a church need to look like, and this developed in a completely different way of worship that was until this time. The construction of church altars was not only the fact in the churches, temples, and basilicas, but the point was that they built or erected the churches over the tombs of martyred saints. And in the basilicas or the church, they emphasize the names and the veneration of these saints or martyrs. For example, the Basilica St. Peter and St. Paul in the Western Empire, the altars were supposedly directed above the apostles' tombs. And then the tombs of both apostles were enclosed in cubical cases, each adorned with a gold cross. So we find here also what we have considered in past centuries related with the veneration and higher level of respect for the martyrs and also the apostles. And they give a special place in the church to emphasize and to recognize these persons. And the altar was located in nearby these places in order to emphasize the importance of the veneration of these human beings. The hierarchy from form of church government. Do you remember how was in the early Christian church, how this developed? We have considered this in the past, in our second lesson, when we consider the first century. Can please somebody come to the whiteboard and write for us? How was originally in the book of Acts that we find this information together with the pastoral epistles? So which was the first? Yes, they were. Okay, please come in the whiteboard and let us write for us. Okay, no problem.
So the apostles were the first one.
Okay, yes.
And I agree with the deacons.
The deacons, yes, this is correct.
And then men of the gifts.
Yes. Men of the gifts, yeah. Yes, he mentioned it. Yes. Which elder? The elders, yes. And then bishops. We have spoken, do you remember, about the columns of Christianity when Paul went to visit to Jerusalem? He said, I saw and I spoke with the columns of the church. Do you remember? We are three persons, right?
Oh yes, Peter, John, and John.
Correct. So,
For council?
yes, yeah. And then was Peter, James, and John. And then, which is the next level? The general council with the representation of the elders, okay? The general council. And we have the example in which chapter, in which book of the Bible?
Acts.
Acts is the book and the chapter is 15. En Hechos 15 está el primer concilio de Jerusalén. So, thank you so much, brother. So, this was the general structure, and everyone have a specific importance according to the office and the area of work. This system remained, but we see here that especially this section developed extremely related toward the other ones, okay? Because apostles were no more at this time, okay? After the first century, when the first century closed, John the Apostle died, approximately 99-100. So this first section from the directly witness of Jesus disappeared completely. Okay, then who represented then the apostles? Do you remember? Or try at least. The name was Fathers of the Church, the Fathers. Do you remember some names? We have mentioned it, that were teach by John and Peter. Do you remember some? You need to know at least two names. Okay. In the first century, we have the apostles. Yeah? They are the witnesses and was no problem. Now, when they die and we come to the second century, we have the fathers of the church. And some of them claim to be disciples of some of the apostles that become fathers of the church. Do you remember some? Excuse me? Stephen was from the deacons, yes. So we have Polycarp. Yeah. Bishop of Ephesus. Also the Bishop of Smyrna was established by John and Peter. So those that presume to be taught by the former disciples and after apostles of the church become like the representatives of them, and they build the theology, they build the doctrine, especially after this developed in which kind of group of people. In the second century, the apologists, do you remember it? What this mean, apologist? Do you remember? It's defense of the truth. The apologist was a defense of the truth. They were accused of magic and superstitious rituals. The Christians was a forbidden religion, if you remember, okay? And they say, because they drink blood, they say they sacrifice children and they eat the blood of the children. What kind of ceremonies is this? That they need to eat bread that is the flesh of Christ, and they need to drink wine that is not wine, but is the blood of Christ. So the apologists came and said, okay, we need to explain to the heathens our religion. And for this, we need to establish a logical presentation of our faith. And this is the reason why the apologists came up as a movement inside of Christianity in the 2nd century. But that was the beginning of the end, because under which influence they worked. Do you remember? Which one of the heresies influenced them to establish this theological or structured faith? Gnosticism, okay? Which was the main point that led agnosticism? Yeah, that was a false teaching because it was based on the logic, on the reason, not faith. Logic, that's reason. You can only accept this that you can manage with your mind, with your knowledge. If you cannot do this, forget about that. So faith was not an important element. Only things that you can present to heathens in a logical way of thinking. Brothers, you need to know this very well. You need to understand the process from one century to another, because otherwise we will not follow the thought and the development of the facts until now and further on. So all this you need to know. In the moment that the church decided that his way to understand the truth need to be presented to the heathen in such a way that they were able to understand, eliminating the faith and the main principles of the truth, was the beginning of apostasy. And we know that this began already in the first period, because what was one of the complaints that the Church of Ephesus, the first century of Christianity, received? One of the main complaints, according to Revelation chapter 2.
I know in the city of Ephesus there was a lot of idolatry that coming to the church.
Correct. You lost your first love. This is the main concern there. And we see which 5 main heresies already at the end of the first century. Do you remember? Idolatry, yes, but the name of the heresies. The Montanists, okay, that was one. What they believe? Yes, yes. Rigid fasting, okay. Then which is the other one? Okay, what about them? Exactly, they emphasize the ceremonial law. They say we need to practice everything, the ceremonial law with the new Christianity, both together, but we cannot put aside. Especially circumcision and baptism, both things needed to be done. Okay?
There's also the Nicolaitans.
Okay, what they believe.
Nicolaitans believe that once saved, always saved.
Mm-hmm.
Believe that your actions could not influence whether you were saved or lost. It was only based on faith. And they believed in mixed marriages, immorality, adultery.
Exactly, because they say you are able to separate your mind from your body. Okay, you can do whatever you want, as you please it to do, but this don't contaminate your mind. So you can eat whatever you want, you can have relationship with anyone that you want, because you don't need to suppress your nature. But if in your mind it's clear, it's no problem. What happened with your body, don't contaminate your mind and don't influence your salvation. Okay, which is another one? The Nazarenes, yes. What about them?
We believe in violence if necessary.
If necessary, they need to apply it in order to defend the truth, what they believe. They believe like the Ebonites in all the ceremonial law. This needed to be kept. Okay, what other group? What about the Docetists? What they believe?
They denied the human nature of Christ.
In which way?
Well, basically by saying that he was visible, but he wasn't really there. When he was here on earth, that he wasn't really human. He didn't have human nature, and that he, I guess, wasn't truly
Human.
Yeah.
Yes, okay. He was always divine. He only took appearance of human form in order to be there as a human being among human beings, but he never, ever was as we are. So let us introduce a break here, and we will continue after 15 minutes break. Let us close with a prayer, please.